Lynette Ong is a distinguished professor of Chinese politics at the University of Toronto and the director of the China Governance Lab at U of T's Munk School of Global Affairs. And Lynette joins us in studio. How are you doing?
Good. How about you?
I am doing well. Now let's talk, given the state of US-Canada relations, some say that Canada is now freed from the pressure of bloc-shaped politics and can engage with China in a more pragmatic way. What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with that. If by bloc-shaped politics you mean United States and its Western allies. I think, United States have actually broken trust among a lot of allies, including Canada and European countries. So countries are out there trying to pursue their own interests, often on an issue-by-issue basis. And in our case, China has been the second largest trading partner. I think it makes sense for Canada to look to China, kind of to diversify away of our trade from the United States towards China. But I think we shouldn't stop at China. China would be the beginning of our diversification strategy. We should also look to Indo-Pacific and Europe.
All right, we'll talk about some of those potential countries making deals, but some see Canada's trade deal with Beijing as risk management under pressure and not a pivot away from the US. What are your thoughts on that?
Like the Prime Minister has put it, I think it's a way of buying insurance. Yes, it's risk management. It's not putting all our eggs in one basket, so diversifying our eggs in many different baskets. But that also means that we are pivoting away from the United States. We are diversifying our reliance away from the United States towards a bunch of other countries. And one of them, and the largest among them, would be China. So it's a bit of both.
Among Canadians, engagement with China remains politically sensitive following years of hostility between the two governments, especially under Trudeau. How should Carney navigate that?
I think he has to walk a very fine line. I think so far he has done pretty well, I would think. On the domestic front, we have seen a shift towards Canadians' attitudes towards the United States under Trump. Unfavorability rating of the United States has actually gone up vis-a-vis Beijing. China used to be very unpopular in Canada for very obvious reasons. We have got 2 Canadians being detained for 1,000 days, right? And I think on the domestic front, the domestic landscape has changed a little bit, has changed quite a bit under Trump. Washington, D.C. is now more unpopular than Beijing, and that's reflected in kind of latest public opinion poll, not only in Canada, but across a lot of Western nations conducted by Pew Research. So on that front, he has got a little bit more mandate. But I think the government needs to go out there and not only sell to people that we need to pay more attention to China, but also be firm on China, not forgetting our commitment towards democracy in Taiwan, and be able to kind of tread between China and our commitments towards all the values that are still important to us, including democracy in Taiwan, human rights issues, and so forth.
What does firm look like?
For instance, I think our business with Taiwan should go according as usual. Should be as usual. We should not prematurely pull MPs out of Taiwan trip.
Okay.
Right. We should not cancel any Taiwan trade deal that we have planned for. I think that would be prematurely kowtowing. I think that would be prematurely being, I think with that, we are signaling to Beijing that we need them more than they need us.
Okay.
I think that's not necessarily true. I think China is at a phase where economically it's weak. Real estate used to account for 30% of GDP growth. Its economic growth has not recovered to the pre-pandemic level. It probably never will. And it now needs to depend on export-led growth to drive its economy, and Canada is one of those places that it looks to. But more importantly, I think because Canada shares a border with the United States, it used to be closest ally of the United States, and where the instruction to arrest Meng Wanzhou came from, not to forget that. So in the age of kind of great power competition between the United States and China, we would think that China naturally wants a better relationship with Canada. So in that sense, I think we should go in there, with all the confidence and, we do have cards in our hands.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying.
I want to get a better understanding of the meetings that happened with Mark Carney just last month, but also the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. He had went, but very different in terms of what had come out of it. Can you give us a little insight into how those two meetings would have gone?
Yeah, Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, after the Beijing trip, he was hammered at home, right? But Mark Carney, after that, he went to Davos and then came back, celebrated as a hero. Two very different reception. I think people would say that Britain gave away a little bit too much before the trip. He approved the mega embassy in London, with a lot of concern about potentially espionage and spies and underground tunnels and so on. So he gave away a little bit too much before he went to Beijing. So he was seen as kind of weak, giving concessions vis-a-vis China. Whereas us, I think we have hold on to it a little bit more firmly, and we didn't actually give away a lot of concessions. The EV tariff reduction is actually restricted to a very small number of quota.
You bring up EV, so I need to talk about some critical minerals. The Trump administration recently announced a new U.S. trade bloc, and that would help because China owns a pretty substantial share of the market, but Canada has not signed yet. Should Canada?
I'm not sure whether U.S. has the credibility to mobilize any country to form a trade bloc. With its recent behavior toned towards taking over Greenland, alienating a bunch of European allies, you see what happened in Munich Security Conference. People are not reassured. Trust has definitely broken. Rubio, right after Munich, went to Hungary and spoke to Viktor Orban. People don't know where the United States stand. So what if we enter into a trade bloc on critical minerals with the United States? They could turn around and do something against us. I think without that sort of predictability and credibility, it will be difficult to lead any sort of alliance.
With that, Canada is spearheading its own efforts to create a trading bloc between the European Union and a 12-nation Indo-Pacific bloc. We're talking 1.5 billion people amongst all those nations. The U.S. is not part of this. And I'm curious, can it succeed without the U.S., with everything that you've mentioned?
Yeah, the proposal was between CPTPP and a bunch of European Union countries, right?
And of course, Lynette, when you say CPTPP, we are talking about the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership.
I think the very idea is kind of complementarity between these countries, which is more developing countries in the Indo-Pacific versus more industrialized nations in Europe. So if those two regions combined, I think would constitute a large proportion of the world's GDP. That would be a good counterbalance against the United States. I don't see that as kind of necessarily as whether we need the United States to succeed, but I think if there is enough complementarity and differences in comparative advantage among these countries, there's a lot of benefits to be gained. Yeah.
Does this present a chance? You mentioned this speech at Davos. Here's an opportunity for the middle powers. Is this a chance for for Canada to be more assertive on that world stage?
I think so. I think Canada is in the right place to lead because we used to be the closest ally to the United States, and now we are not. So there's a lot of serious damage being done to Canadian diplomacy. And I think our Prime Minister, in addition to being a political leader, he's also an intellectual, someone who could conceptualize ideas, who could articulate kind of big ideas and deliver it to common people. With a combination of the two, I think we are in a good position to lead and mobilize countries and to stand firm and get middle powers hang together to advance our interests.
Well, Nat, we are going to leave it there. Of course, something that we will continue to follow. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you for having me.